Hello, we are covering now chapter number 5 about lipids. During the presentation, you will see links to some external videos in YouTube. I will add these links in the introduction to the video. Lipids in general are a group of compounds that includes 4 different types of molecules: triglycerides and phospholipids. And inside of these molecules, we will have fatty acids. So we will start by learning this portion, fatty acids. So that's why I like to call them like one subgroup within the lipids family. So fatty acids, triglycerides, phospholipids, and esterols. So cholesterol is one of the examples of esterols. And something that is very important in general as a group is that, in contrast to carbs that we just learned in the previous chapter and proteins, which will be learned in the next chapter, lipids, they are hydrophobic. It means they do not like water, so they do not mix with water, and this will affect the way we digest them, because, for example, they won't dissolve in saliva or in the gastric juices, and then we have to find a way of how to digest them, the same to transport them, and the absorption of lipids. And about these questions about, are fats the same as lipids? Well, in the first chapter, I said we were using the same word to refer to this group, but in general, only fatty acids and triglycerides are the real fats that give us 9 calories per gram. In general, lipids are very important. They provide energy for our body. They are a secondary source of energy because carbohydrates are used as first. And you know already that they provide 9 calories per gram. The reason why they provide more energy than carbs and proteins is because they have more amount of carbon-hydrogen bonds. And due to the chemistry of these bonds, there is more chemical energy released when the carbon-hydrogen bonds are broken in comparison to the energy that is released when a carbon-oxygen bond is broken. Lipids also are the building blocks of the body. So, for example, some examples: cholesterol, phospholipids, they are part of the biological membrane. So even if they do not give us energy, they are important because they have a function in our body. In general, lipids also have other functions. For example, they help us to maintain temperature of our body. Cholesterol is a precursor of some molecules like the sex hormones. Also some vitamins, and we will learn that this in the second part of the semester. Some vitamins do not dissolve in water, and they do depend on fats to be transported. So fats in general has a role on transporting some vitamins. Therefore, the word fats or lipids is not exactly the same as being bad or unhealthy. And following a fat-free diet is completely crazy, a crazy idea, because they have very important roles in your body. And the key is really, what type of lipids are you eating? During the presentation, you will see that we will refer, for example, to some of these guidelines. You are advised to reduce saturated fats. You are advised also to reduce cholesterol, and trans fats also should be avoided. And then instead, you are advised to increase the intake of monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids. But what is this? What is a trans fat, a saturated or unsaturated fats, etc.? Why do we need to reduce some of them or increase or try to focus on others? That's what we will learn during the presentation. So when you have seen some nutrition fact panel in the nutrition label, we were focusing in the previous classes just in total fats, carbs, and proteins. We never referred about these parts of the label that if it also tells you or give you information about how much saturated fat or how much trans fat is in there. So let's see what is this. The answer to all these questions is in the chemistry of this compound. Let's understand the chemistry, or what's the difference in the structure of these molecules to be able to understand all these concepts or different terms. I say that we have 4 types of lipids. So here in the screen, you see 3 of them: triglyceride, phospholipids, and esterol. But then I added fatty acids as a 4th category because, yeah, they are part of the triglycerides and phospholipids molecule. So we need to understand their structure in order to understand the other structure. Let's start with the structure of a fatty acid. A fatty acid has a chain of hydrocarbons. It means only carbon forming bonds with hydrogen. And that's what you see in there. It could be different in length. So we can have like 12, 24. They are usually an even number. So we refer that they are always an even number. There are some exceptions in nature, but in general, what you get are these type of molecules always with an even number. And in the most common ones, they have between 12 to 24 carbon atoms. And then in one end of the molecule, we have these completely different structures in when carbon is forming bonds with oxygen. So COO minus or COOH. This is what we call in chemistry a carboxylic acid group. And that's probably the reason why we also refer to these molecules as fatty acids. And this end here, we refer to this end as the alpha end of the molecule. You see here the carbon that follows is the alpha carbon, and we refer to this end as the alpha end. On the other hand of the molecule, then carbon is forming bonds with 3 hydrogens, and this is known in chemistry as a methyl group, and we refer to this end of the molecule having the methyl group as the omega end. As I say, fatty acids can be different in length. They can also have differences in the degree of saturation. What does it mean? Sorry, this is a carboxylic acid group. And then what does it mean to have differences in the degree of saturation? If I have to say this in plain language, the fastest way you can learn this, I would say that when the molecule only have single bonds between the carbon-carbon atoms, then this is a saturated fatty acid. When the molecule has at least one double bond, we refer to this as unsaturated fatty acids. Okay, that's it. The reason why we use the word saturated or unsaturated is related to the fact that carbons in chemistry can form up to 4 bonds. That's the way carbons are, let's say, happy or stable. And then here, when we have carbons forming single bonds with another carbon atom, then there are chances only to bind 2 hydrogen atoms, okay? And then you have the highest amount of hydrogens possible. So that's why we say the molecule is saturated with hydrogen. In contrast, if the carbon-carbon atoms, they form a double bond, then we don't have the highest amount of hydrogens possible, because as carbon atoms only want 4 bonds, this is 1, 2, 3, and then only 1 atom of hydrogen forming a bond with a carbon when the carbon is involved in a double bond. So in this case, we refer that this is unsaturated, so unsaturated on hydrogens. So in general, again, saturated means only single bond. Unsaturated means there is at least one double bond in the molecule. And this can be different. One of the differences that you see between different fatty acids. Unsaturated fatty acids, it means when they have at least one single bond, they can be mono or polyunsaturated, meaning one or more double bonds. Omega-3, 6 here in this bottle, they are polyunsaturated fatty acids. So they will have more than one double bond. And the notation omega that we used to refer to then this 369 is about chemistry as well. It refers to the location of the first double bond from the methyl group. It means in the omega end of the molecule. So for example, if I come here, this is the omega end because this is the methyl group. And if I count 1, 2, 3, the first double bond, the only one in this type of molecules, but we can have larger molecules with more double bonds. But still, if the first double bond is in the third carbon, then we refer to this as an omega-3 fatty acid. We can have other examples in which the first double bond is in carbon 6 or in carbon 9, and then we refer to them as omega-6 or 9, respectively. These molecules, they have many health benefits. For example, 3 and 6, they are precursors of a variety of hormones, important for your brain also. And they offer some protection for coronary heart disease. They are essential nutrients, meaning that we only get them if we have them in our diet. We are unable to synthesize them. Okay, all nutrients are important, so I call your attention again that in this course, the word essential does not mean they are important. All nutrients are important. So this refers more about, do you depend on your diet to need the amount that you need? Yes, this is essential. No, it means it's non-essential. And omega-3 and 6, they are essential nutrients. Omega-9, in contrast, we can synthesize omega-9 if we have 3 and 6 in our diet. So it's not exactly an essential nutrient. We found omega-3 and 6 fatty acids mainly in fish and shellfish, and in some vegetables, oils, nuts, etc. I will show you a chart later when talking about the food sources of fat. Also, fatty acids can differ in shape. Okay, unsaturated fatty acids, they can have unsaturated fatty acid with a double bond. Depending on the position of the hydrogen, they will adopt a different shape. In some molecules, we will have the hydrogens located toward the same side of the molecule. And this part, for example, in this view, they are toward the bottom part. And we refer to this as the cis form, which is a natural form in which we find unsaturated fatty acids like omega-3 and 6, for example. And we can have the trans form, and this is a reason, this is related to these trans fats that you see on the label. This is about when the hydrogens locate in opposite parts of the hydrogen of the double bond, sorry. So they are opposite parts, and we refer to this as trans form. Trans form or trans fats are really obtained by a chemical chain made by manufacturers. And this was made long time ago, or it was discovered a long time ago, and they saw that it increases the stability of foods. And that's why it's sometimes found in your foods. But both saturated fats and trans fats, it means fatty acids or triglycerides containing fatty acids that are saturated, it means only with single bonds. And these trans fats that have been added with some kind of process in your meal and your foods, etc., they increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. And the reason is also related to the chemistry. We won't go into that level of detail here, but when the fatty acids have single bonds, or when they adopt this shape in which they are like a straight molecule, they are very stable. They pack each other, and you require high temperature to convert them or to change them from the natural form in which they are instead of being solid or liquids. So they are solid at room temperature, and then you require high temperature to change them from solid to liquid. As a result, if you have them in your diet, they can also accumulate in the arteries, forming this kind of plaque here that affects the flow of your blood, increases your blood pressure, etc. And this is a beginning of cardiovascular disease. I will stop the first part of the video here just to make it shorter. So this presentation will have really 2 parts.